Hi guys, any video involving Lee Anderson can begin with Lee Anderson doesn't understand. I don't think he was selected by the Conservatives or later by Reform UK as a politician based on his intellect. So he doesn't understand that asylum seekers have a right to claim asylum, and he doesn't seem to understand the role of local government when it comes to buses. And we'll get to that in just a moment. Have a listen.
You can't arrest and detain people who haven't done anything wrong.
Well, they have done something wrong, Nigel. They've left a safe country in France and they're coming over to this country. And the fact, I mean, this is disgusting what Chloe's just raised about we're actually ferrying these young men into town centres in free buses. I've got pensioners in the rural parts of my constituency that can't get a bus to the doctor's surgery.
Yeah, but if they're asylum seekers, that until a decision has been made, the answer is to try and cut the backlog and get decisions made much more quickly. But until that's happened, they've done nothing wrong by coming here to claim asylum. That's the law.
That is the law. Either Lee Anderson doesn't understand this, or he's pretending not to understand. Either Lee Anderson is dumb, or he's a liar. I'll let you decide which it is. Now, a few things to unpack here. First of all, the fact that asylum seekers are coming through France, not from France. They're not French citizens, leaving France to claim asylum. They're coming through France, and they have a right to claim asylum in whatever country they feel best suits them. They need to stay in France. France is a safe country. No, there's no obligation on them to stay in France. They want to come to Britain because they have connections to Britain. Maybe they're from ex-colonies. Maybe they speak English. Maybe they have family or some sort of connections in Britain that's bringing them there, that they want to be reunited with their friends and family. They are the pull factors. There's no point saying that they need to stay in France. They don't want to stay in France. And there's no obligation on them to stay in France. So Lee Anderson clearly doesn't understand the asylum process or the asylum as a whole. And also, it's interesting that Reform UK never talk about, for example, Christians who are fleeing persecution from Muslim countries. Should they be banned as well? We don't hear much about those people. We hear a lot about Muslim asylum seekers, but not very much about other groups. And of course, you can't identify if somebody is a Christian asylum seeker or Muslim asylum seeker until you process the claim. And you can only process the claim when they're in the country. Either Lee Anderson doesn't understand this or he's pretending not to. Now, he also mentioned buses. Okay, remember, asylum seekers are not allowed to work. Lee Anderson is against allowing them to work. So how are they supposed to pay for transport? I don't know if they're talking here about just moving around, but it doesn't make any difference. If they have to move from one place to another and they're not allowed to work, they're not allowed to make any money for themselves, then how are they supposed to pay for transport? It has to be provided for them. Unless you want them just to stay in the ex-hotel. Or should they actually try and integrate? Go into the town centre, meet with people, do something, as opposed to just sitting around for years waiting for their claim to be processed. Doesn't it make sense for them to integrate? We keep hearing that they're not integrating. Well, this would help them integrate if they do something in the community. But also, I'm not sure if Lee Anderson is suggesting that when people arrive in Dover that they have to walk all the way to Manchester, or if it's just, but it doesn't make any difference. They're not allowed to work, so they can't pay their way when it comes to transport. And finally, the cherry on the cake or the icing on the cake, Lee Anderson complaining that pensioners in his area are not getting the bus services they need. Well, when Lee Anderson was a Conservative MP, we can see here, according to They Work For You, Lee Anderson generally voted against more powers for local councils. So if councils had more powers, they could raise more money and they could provide better services, for example, to pensioners. When it comes to the Conservatives, a party that he was the deputy chairman of, they were cutting money to councils. They were cutting back on the financing going into local councils so they could provide services like the ones that Lee Anderson is complaining about. You notice that people on the right, especially Reform UK, will only complain about homelessness or pensioners not having bus services or stuff like this in the context of immigration. When was the last time Lee Anderson brought up the point of pensioners not having bus services? Things that he voted against in a sense. Or homelessness within the context of those individual issues. It's always connected to immigration. Do you notice that? People on the right seem to care about homelessness or homeless people only when we're talking about asylum seekers in ex-hotels. When you take asylum seekers in ex-hotels out of the equation, they don't give a crap about homeless people. I often ask them, would you support higher taxes to help people into proper accommodation? And the response generally is, no, these people are lazy, or these people are feckless, or these people are drug addicts, and we shouldn't actually support them. So but bring in the issue of immigration, yes, we need to help these people. So these people are charlatans, these politicians, and Reform UK, of course, hires charlatans. Lee Anderson either doesn't understand the asylum system, which is very strange because he's been a politician for a number of years. He should have learned at this stage, or he's lying to people. Which is it? Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.